Good afternoon, Dr. Lamprecht.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice,
Are you
Commissioners.
well?
I'm good, thank you.
Just two quick questions. What was your what kind of a master's program did you follow? Coursework or coursework plus dissertation or purely dissertation? Quickly.
I followed a pure dissertation, research dissertation master.
What was it about?
I did the dissertation with the title International Law in the Post-1994 Constitutions of the Republic of South Africa, Application and Terminology.
And the doctorate?
The doctorate I did a thesis on jurisdiction and nullum crimen sine lege jure and the adjudication of international crimes in national jurisdictions.
Did they enable you to perform your duties better as a magistrate and even as an acting judge?
I would say yes. Yes, the research helped me a lot.
Okay, tell us just how ready you are for appointment to the High Court. In your own words, very briefly, this is who I am. These are developments ever since you've appointed me. This is how I've improved myself. In your own words, just tell us how ready you are.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I did an initial B-Proc with a view to go on to LLB. However, I was then called up for military service, which I grudgingly had to undertake. But after that, I was appointed immediately as a senior public prosecutor. That was in 1983 somewhere, and in Sanin, where I actually grew up and went to school. I decided to develop further, so I wanted to do the LLB, but then the new university did not want to recognize my Latin and Roman law that I did at the previous university, so I had to do that over. And before I did the regional court test, I then did the diploma legum, just to get past the Latin and Roman law thing, and after that, after I was appointed as a regional magistrate, I did my LLB, then LLM, and the doctorate. I've always been I must choose my words carefully, a controversial and even notorious person sometimes, a judicial officer, because I'm not really scared at sticking my neck out to hand down a judgment if there is no precedent set. Well, the biggest example, of course, the Messiah judgment that made a turn in the Constitutional Court.
Very well. Reserve judgments, part-head matters. A number of regional courts have been struggling to finalize cases. Would you know what the cause of this is, very briefly?
There are a number of causes, but the most common thing I would say, and there the law needs to be looked at, the most common thing is, especially in the regional courts where people face 15 years or even life imprisonment at times, as soon as they are out on bail, the delaying tactic starts with private practitioners and so on. And it's either the private practitioners are not available or the accused person is indisposed, some things like that. But I tend to try and finalize my roles as quick as possible. I'm proud to say that I worked down my roles at Mashishing of over 100 right down to 18 at the last count, and at Graskop to 13 at the last count. Then well, from now onwards, I will be handed all the unfortunate poaching cases from the Kruger National Park, because at Mbombela they have a huge backlog of cases, so they're coming over to my court for the moment.
And have you, while acting as a judge, disposed of your cases just as expeditiously?
Yes, I'm proud to say that I did, especially during my last acting stint, when I did the Eastern Circuit for Gauteng at Middelburg and Ermelo. I remember once finishing my 2-week role at Ermelo within the first week. And I phoned the JP, and he then allocated me to Johannesburg for civil trials for the following week, which I did.
Thank you. JP?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Dr. Lamprecht, your acting stint has been solely in Gauteng, not in Limpopo so far. It would appear that you did more of criminal trials. To what extent did you go regarding civil matters?
Well, during my first acting stint, JP, I was allocated to the civil component of the High Court in Pretoria. I did 2 weeks. I did appeals and applications and admissions, and the other 2 weeks I did civil trials on a daily basis, and I think I did quite well then. And then, of course, during the acting stint on circuit, where it was mainly criminal work, I also got exposure to civil cases when my roles were.
Maybe in all fairness to you, I'll defer that to my colleague, Judge President Mlambo, about your stint regarding civil matters in Gauteng. But would you regard it as enough experience which you gained to venture into being permanent on the bench at this special?
JP, I would say yes. Before I was appointed as a regional magistrate, I used to do only civil work in the district court. And after my appointment as regional magistrate, before the law was changed to add civil jurisdiction to the regional courts, under the old law as it stood, the regional magistrate was at the same time additional magistrate for the district in which he presides. So to keep myself up to date, I used to do the district's motion court roles on Fridays or whatever, just to keep abreast of developments.
There's a general outcry regarding backlog cases from the magistrate court level up to High Court, and we do emphasize the fact that cases must be finalized as soon as possible. Do you at this stage have any part-head matter which can give you a sense of worry that it's unduly delaying? Or what?
No. I think at this very moment I have 4 part-head matters, but we are on defense case, and I think we will be able to finalize those within the next 2 or 3 weeks. I am not a person who reserves judgment. I usually would do an extempore judgment, but if a reserved judgment is required, it takes me a day, perhaps 2, to prepare.
Now, my information is to the effect that there is a certain outstanding judgment, I think a case of State versus Chilwani and Daba in Mala in Bushbuckridge, case number B115 of 2012. Now, my information is to the fact that this case has been on the roll for 4 years. Would you try to explain what, in the light of the requirement that matters must be finalized? Are you, perhaps, let me say, are you aware of that? Is this information correct?
I'm not aware of that, JP, because it's been 2 years since I last presided at Mala, at Tulamash, and at that stage there were more than 200 cases on the roll, and I was assigned to go there only for 4 days every second week, which is totally inadequate to deal with a role of that caliber. Ever since they have appointed, the Magistrates Commission has appointed a permanent regional magistrate there, and I'm not aware of the condition of that court role at the moment. I am going there next week to do matters where my colleague have recused herself.
Now, there is a concern raised by a professional body called National Forum of Advocates. In all fairness to you, I would quote verbatim what they are saying, and let's clear this up, lest we don't know where we're going. It says, and I quote, "Unfortunately, we do not recommend this candidate's appointment as a judge at this stage. He is well known to our members who practice either full-time or occasionally in Mpumalanga. The candidate has been a civil servant his whole occupational life, as his curriculum vitae indicates. He has progressed from a prosecutor to regional court magistrate and is academically well qualified. However, it is felt by some members of the National Forum of Advocates who have appeared before him in criminal cases that he is sometimes biased in favor of the state and does not consistently apply the constitutional imperative that an accused in a criminal case is presumed innocent until proven guilty." You'll agree with me, this is a sort of an indictment. Maybe let's just clear this up, would you?
JP, it is an indictment, but it comes as a surprise because I never knew about this. I haven't known about this until you just now read it. However, I think my track record will show that that is not the case.
Were you sent comments? Were you sent comments by professional bodies?
I was sent comments, but only from the Black Lawyers Association and from ARMSA and from an attorney, Makaya.
You never had these comments, the opportunity to reflect on them?
No, I never had an opportunity to reflect on that.
Yes. JP, maybe you should defer that question until we've verified that he was given that document to satisfy, to reflect on it, so as to be able to provide.
I just raised it
answer.
because it's contained in our
No, that I understand. That I understand. I'm just saying.
That question.
All right. Thank you.
CJ. No further questions.
Thank you. MEC.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Mine is very short, Dr. Lamprecht. Just to understand as to whether you are able to take a personal responsibility to make sure that the matters that are before you are followed up and until the logical conclusion of those matters or cases that are in the court of law. Thanks.
Of course, that is part of our duties to take control of the court roles assigned to us and to see to it that every matter is expedited and dealt with as soon as possible. Any delaying tactics would be discountenanced in the strongest of possible terms, and one would just get down to the business and do the trial and deal with it.
You done, MEC?
Thank you, Chief Justice. I'm actually asking it within the context of the questions that have been asked before.
That's fine. I just wanted to know if you have another question or whether you have
No,
finished.
on this one, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. JP Mlambo.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Dr. Lamprecht.
Afternoon, JP.
It's correct. You acted for, was it 4 weeks in Pretoria in the civil section?
That's right.
You did civil trials and appeals. And I've never appointed you again, is that correct? In the civil side of things?
Yes,
Yes.
except for that 1 week during the circuit that the role collapsed.
Can we deal with that week? You were allocated a civil trial by Judge DJP Mujapilo.
That's right.
It lasted a day.
Yes.
And then,
Actually, I did a few that lasted a day.
yeah. But what did you do when that one, well, there's one where you wrote a judgment.
Yes.
What happened when you finished hearing that matter?
I do not understand. Oh, there was an application for leave to appeal later on.
Right. But am I correct, just to cut a long story short, that you heard that matter, you stood it down, the next day you didn't sit, the third day you came and rendered a judgment on that day, on that matter you had in the first day?
No, I handed down the judgment the very next day. In that particular matter,
Right,
the
and then?
Lakana matter, yes.
Yes. Because the report from the DJP was that he had other work that he wanted to give you, but you parked yourself to write a learned judgment.
JP, I would like to differ with DJP Mojapelo there because I wrote the judgment overnight.
Yes.
I heard the arguments on the first day and I wrote the judgment overnight and I handed it down, and the very next day I was handed a new civil trial.
Okay. I'll defer to your answer because that was the report that I got. Talking about the matter that JP Makhuba raised with you, is it correct that with the redemarcation of the magisterial districts, your work in Mashishing has reduced drastically?
Yes and no, JP. Initially it was thought that I would transfer quite a number of cases to the Limpopo division, regional division, but in the end I finalized most of those matters on my role. I think I transferred about 5 cases to the Praktisier regional court in the end.
You say you've reduced the backlog to 18 in Mashishing
That is
and
correct.
13 in Graskop.
That is correct.
I know this because I'm the JP responsible for Mpumalanga, you know that.
Yes.
And I've had an engagement with you and your colleagues in the regional court about these issues.
Yes.
And the main issue was the long list of part-head matters that the regional court magistrates always have. You remember?
I remember, Jay.
Am I incorrect to say in your ranks there is resistance to what I'm doing as JP to say finalize these matters? Because as I sit, I've got matters that are on the roll for 6 years in the regional court roll. Am I incorrect
JP, no,
about the resistance?
I would say the resistance is not overt, but yes, tangible. I could sense a resistance among colleagues of mine. However, from my side, I'm doing everything I can to deal with matters as soon as possible and to prioritize matters that are on my rolls.
Yes. You see, when I first said to the regional court president, I don't want to directly deal with regional court magistrates because they report to the regional court president, but as JP, I have a responsibility. Tell your guys to stop rushing to start new matters. They must finalize old matters. She was completely ignored. Are you aware of that? In Mpumalanga?
I never ignored, but my instructions from the regional court president, or our instructions, are to enroll at least 6 trial cases per day, which is humanly impossible
Yes.
to deal with.
Yes.
And especially from a budgetary perspective, that is counterproductive because witnesses have to be paid fees and so on, and then you get a tendency from the officials responsible for subpoenaing witnesses to become lax, and they then just do not subpoena the witnesses for court. But I tend to take a very strict approach to that. When a case is enrolled for me for trial, I expect it to continue on the day set down for trial.
Yes. You see, I'm raising these issues because we're testing your suitability for appointment to the High Court. We don't subscribe to matters just idling on our rolls in the High Court. You agree with me?
I agree.
And I've had this discussion with you and your fellow regional court magistrates, because the report that came back to me from the regional court president was that she actually had to issue an instruction with my name on her letter to say the DJP. The JP says the following, and that's when she got some response to finalize. But despite that, there's about 25 cases in the Mpumalanga Regional Court that are over 5 years old that have awaiting trial detainees for that law. You are aware of that picture?
I am aware. The latest list has been circulated with us just a week ago.
And it came from my office. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, I noted.
Right. Now, this case that JP Makhoba sent you, it's a case that was given to me by Legal Aid South Africa, because for some reason when we ask for names of judicial officers with these long outstanding cases, we don't get that information from the regional magistracy. So we have to get the information from Legal Aid South Africa or from the prosecutions. And that's where your name comes up. This Chilwane matter.
That particular case, as far as I know, is not part heard before me. I have finalized all my part heard matters at Tulamage.
Yes, but do you know of this case? You don't know it?
I don't know about it.
Yes.
Not by name, because I deal with hundreds of cases.
Yeah, it's a case that's exactly 4 years on the roll. And it involves, it's murder and AB. What does AB mean? Attempted what? I don't know what it is. If you don't know, that's fine.
I don't know.
But let me ask you this question, just to be fair to you. Minnie is your colleague, isn't it? Minnie,
Dion
your
Minnie.
colleague in Middelburg.
Yes.
Msebi is your colleague in Bombela.
Yes.
All these names are here. Geldenees is your colleague.
Yes.
Wilken,
My ex-colleague, he has retired.
but he still has matters on the roll, isn't it?
I do not know. I'm not aware of the roles at
And
Mbombela.
Master Rhodes, is that your colleague?
Master Rhodes is a colleague at Middelburg, yes.
Yeah, you see, these are the names. I'm just being fair to you. I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm just depicting a picture to say, if you want to come to the High Court, we require a specific state of mind towards dealing with work. You understand that?
I understand.
Right. Now, let me come to the Mala. You said you finished all your role in Mala.
And not all the role.
Yeah.
The cases that I started, I
Yes.
finalized.
Yes.
There might be one or two where where warrants were issued for non-appearances that my notes are still gathering dust in my office, but I don't know about them having been re-enrolled.
Yes, this is a Mala case and it's a private brief matter. It's not legal aid. And that's where you guys have problems with the private attorneys. Am I correct? You don't have problems with legal aid delaying matters.
No.
Yes. Now, you mentioned your station is Mashishing, you sit in Graskop. Am I correct that a decision was taken to take the environmental cases from Skukuza to be heard in Mashishing?
Yes.
And then there's been an outcry that from Skukuza to Mashishing is too far. That's why you sit in Graskop.
That's correct, JP. The outcry was there, and I had a meeting with the regional court president and Advocate Riba and Advocate Moonsami of
And
the
Advocate
Environment
Mzinyati.
And yes, and then it was decided that those cases would go to Graskop. And the very next thing I knew was no, they should come to Mashishing. And then the attorney started making a big hoo-ha about that and so on. And I said, well, this is not my decision.
Yes.
It must be taken up with the regional court president and, if need be, with the magistrates commission.
Yeah. You see, these cases emanate from Skukuza.
Yes.
There is a court in Skukuza. What's the problem in the regional court sitting in Skukuza?
JP, as far as I'm concerned, there is no problem. I even offered to the regional court president to go and sit in Skukuza.
Yes.
But for some reason or the other, she flatly refused.
She refused for the matters to go to Skukuza,
To go
where
to
they
Skukuza.
emanate,
That's
where the
right.
witnesses are, where
Where
everyone
everything-
is. They
where
must come to
everything is.
Graskop.
Yes.
And to kick the High Court out of Graskop.
Yes, that was a very unfortunate incident, JP.
So the High Court must now build a backlog because it has nowhere to sit.
I must apologize for that, JP. I had an understanding with the district court magistrate to use the district courtroom for regional court while the High Court is sitting there.
Yes.
And for some reason or other, then the regional court president and the chief magistrate of Mbombela
Yes.
instructed the district magistrate
Yes.
to lock her courtroom and not to allow the High Court or the regional court to sit there. And then one day I arrived there and there was a conflict of roles, and I phoned the regional court president and I said, now I'm having trouble here. And she said, you go and tell the High Court judge to pack up and go.
To go to Mashishin.
What?
Pack up and go. Okay.
Just pack up and go.
Okay.
And I
That's
said,
fine.
no, I cannot do that. And she actually instructed me, and then I went to the presiding judge the second occasion this happened. And she then phoned Judge Lechori, who is the chairperson of the Magistrates Commission, and I spoke with him on the phone. And I told him, this is my position, and I unfortunately cannot do anything about this. And then he phoned the chief magistrate and instructed them to
open up the courtroom.
open up the court,
For the
so
court,
that,
for the High Court to work.
for the regional court to work.
No, they had locked out the High Court because the regional court uses the other courtroom there.
Yes, but
Yes.
but the High Court was using the rear. We have always, in the regional court, if the High Court is in session, even at Mashishing,
Yes.
I have always deferred to another courtroom because the High Court, of course, has precedence.
Okay, let me just round up this. Are you prepared, because you seem to be the identified regional court magistrate to deal with the environmental law cases, are you prepared to go and sit in Skukuza?
I am prepared to go and sit there.
I'm happy to
I
hear
have
that.
voiced my,
So the resistance to sit there that doesn't come from you.
doesn't come from me.
See,
I was told that by the regional court president that the courtroom there is not suitable. accommodation for the regional court. I cannot see why. I've been sitting in small civil courtrooms
Yes.
when there were a conflict of roles.
Yeah. I'm sorry I've had to take you through this, but I think it's my effort to say when we say we want people to come to the High Court, which is what you demonstrated when you did that circuit court. You finished off everything, isn't it?
Yes.
Why is the regional court struggling when the regional magistrates, when they are sitting as regional magistrates, struggling to finish? They finish when they are in the High Court, but not in their court. We are one justice system.
Again, I must choose my words carefully, but I must say that the caliber of the prosecutors in the regional courts are definitely not what you get in the High Court. The planning of cases, consultations with witnesses are rarely, if ever, done on time. The same with legal practitioners. You often get it that a legal practitioner would ask for an adjournment because he's tired.
Yeah.
And then you say, what are you tired about? Because...
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Lamprecht, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JP.
JP, before I call on Commissioner Nyambe to put questions, let me just say the Secretariat made a mistake in relation to that document. When it became available, instead of sending it to Dr. Lamprecht, they sent again what they had already sent to him. So that's where he never had the opportunity to reflect on it.
Thank you, Mr. Justice.
Thank you very much.
Justice, thank you.
Commissioner Nyambe?
Thank you, CJ. Afternoon, Dr. Lamprecht.
Afternoon.
Are you able to speak any African language?
No, sir. I am able to understand quite a number of languages, which comes with the years of experience. I grew up in a mining town where the mine dialect was spoken, and that I can manage fairly well. The basis of that is, of course, isiZulu and isiXhosa, which I do not really have a problem of understanding as we go along in court cases. I must say that the interpreters in my courts are usually kept on their toes, because if ever I sense something being interpreted wrongly, I would interject immediately. So I'm actually known for that. But I do not speak any of those languages. I've been exposed to too many foreign languages, English being one of them, of course.
How many languages, how many African languages in Mashishing, if I may ask?
In Mashishing, well, we have Chonga, some, not very much, but mostly Sepedi. Sometimes you get Tswana-speaking people there. Then the odd Sivenda. And yes, we do not have many Xhosas there or Sesotho's from Bloemfontein, where I actually did my regional court test.
When responding to JP Mlambo, you said you observe the resistance. Maybe your personal contribution to assist to deal with that resistance?
Well, whenever colleagues phone me, and they often do, I tell them to do their business as quick as possible and to deal with it. But unfortunately, they do not really phone me that often in respect of case flow management. I often get phone calls for guidance on specific legal questions, and I am well respected among colleagues for that. But I have spoken to colleagues whenever I saw that they are not dealing with their roles properly, and I think I'm being respected for that as well.
The Constitution, when dealing with the issue of appointment of judicial officers, it's making it very clear to us that we have to consider gender and the racial composition of our country. What's your take on that?
I have no take on that. The Constitution is clear. It's a constitutional imperative that that has to be taken into account. And the need for the judiciary to reflect broadly the racial and gender composition of the country must be taken into account by this Commission whenever recommendations are made. However, for us who are nominated, we cannot really determine whether a specific post requires that kind of transformation. But as far as transformation is concerned, my specific studies in constitutional law and human rights law, which went post dip legum into LLB and LLM and the doctorate, would clearly indicate that I am transformed by mind to uphold the values of the Constitution of this country.
How can the issue of race and language legitimize confidence in the judicial?
The issue of what?
Race and language legitimize the confidence in the judicial.
Well, of course, the litigants would like to see that the judiciary is more representative of the community. Not that the judges are necessarily appointed from the community, because they are all lawyers, but race clearly has a role to play in building trust in the judiciary, and as do language. There are a number of courts where indigenous languages are spoken without an interpreter, and the records are even transcribed into that. However, that poses a problem should such matters go on appeal, and the particular judges hearing the appeal are not capable of reading the particular language. Even Afrikaans is one of those problems for some judges, but therefore the transcription services and the language services are there for the courts to assist the courts in dealing with those matters.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Nyambi. The Professor Emeritus.
Dr. Lambert, I thought the first thing you'd do would be to thank Judge President Mlambo, because in my whole life as a lawyer, I haven't come across a JP who is hands-on, who provides oversight, and now, firstly, you have not said thank you to him, but secondly, I haven't heard you say that you yourself observed some of these challenges and reported to the JP. Can you tell us why?
Well, the challenges that I observe, Professor, is I always report them to my leadership, to the regional court president, as soon as I become aware of them. And as I'm required to do, I do not want to be accused by my leadership for going over her head and reporting directly to Judge President.
Let's leave it there. You know, in 1970, where were you and what did you do?
1970. I was still doing grade 7, I think, standard 5 in the old terms.
At that time when you were in Standard 5, I was a revenue clerk in Zanin. And the situation that the JP is referring to was more or less the same. So do you agree that there hasn't been transformation since you were Standard 5, now you're a doctor, that the situation is still the same?
That there has been transformation of, yes, definitely.
You know, in that year, when I was a clerk, the communities of Zanin used to complain to me that the magistrates don't listen to them, they listen to people who have lawyers, and they don't even care to understand what people are saying, and they prefer to go to Queen Mujaji of the Balobedi to take their cases there, not to the courts. In 1995, when I was legal advisor to Queen Mujaji, Indian and white business people preferred to bring their cases to the Queen because they said the courts were not helpful. Do you think there's a change now?
I think definitely there's a change now. I am all for accessibility of the courts and justice, and I think my track record would show that. In my 35 years of experience, I've had hundreds of cases appealed against my judgments.
As a specialist in environmental law, do you know that traditional healers have an interest in the environment?
Yes, I do know.
Do you have any interaction with them?
Only if the case comes before me in the court. We are not allowed to interact with the community.
Have you heard a phrase called "mutu ke mutu ka batho, munui munui banu"?
Yes, but yes. No, I'm all for the recognition of the art of traditional healership and the vocation, and so I, if especially, if a person believes in a particular doctor, even if it's a medical doctor, then he or she believes in.
Lastly, don't you think that traditional courts could help to reduce the backlogs in the courts and speed up the processes? And if so, what have you done to encourage the referral of matters to traditional courts?
We have no authority to refer matters to the traditional courts. We have no jurisdiction to refer matters to the traditional courts, although I recognize their authority.
I've just received a note, and it's a pity because we still have to proceed, that if lunch is not consumed in the next 30 minutes, it will be spoiled. So the choice is ours. There are two more to go, two more commissioners to put questions to him. Should we proceed in the next 30 minutes? If you don't eat, they say it will be affected.
Suppose we proceed and then just...
Okay, can we agree that we proceed? Thank you. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Dr. Lamprecht. I'll be short. You did say earlier that I think next week you're going to be appearing in Mpumalanga courts to deal with poaching matters. Now, poaching is a serious problem in our country. I've just come back from the CITES conference where, it was highlighted. What is your view of police investigation and prosecutorial competence that you've found in your courts when dealing with poaching matters? The first question.
Well, with poaching matters, of course, they have specialized prosecutors acting there. There are two operating in the Mpumalanga courts at this moment, and they are perfectly competent to deal with those matters. And even the police investigations from especially the Kruger Park, I've found to be stellar, to say the least. It's been very good. However, there is a serious backlog in those kind of cases. I heard last week from the regional court president that more than 100 of those cases are being transferred to my court as we speak. I had 24 of them on my roll recently, after they have already been transferred, but they will obviously increase within the next week or two.
So you have presided over matters that deal with poaching?
2 or 3, yes, to finalization already.
Have you ever found from your experience that it is possible that the accused that's before you there is just a pawn for large syndicates, national and international syndicates that operate and coerce these people because of poverty? They get involved in this kind of illegal activity. And what advice have you given in that regard as a magistrate?
Yes. The big problem is those syndicates are situated in the Far East, mostly. And our courts do not really have jurisdiction over them. Then as far as experience is concerned, what usually happens is the poachers that are sent in, they are sent in a group of 3. The one carrying a gun, the one carrying an axe, and the other one carrying a rucksack with provisions. The guy carrying a gun would get 3,000 rand per hit for one rhino horn. The guy who sends them in would get 80,000 rand. And of course, the rhino horn is worth more than 2 million rands in the actual syndicate's hands. So those people are really being exploited. But unfortunately, in terms of the law, you have to deal with them in order to stop people from falling for that kind of thing. But we especially, the poaching matters, we especially get from the neighboring country, Mozambique, people infiltrating. And I think prevention is better than cure. If there's better policing and better guarding of our border there, the poaching matters would decrease. And 2 weeks ago, I attended an environmental crimes workshop, and I was informed that it has decreased significantly. However, the old cases are still on the roll, and they still need to be dealt with.
Just finally, are you satisfied that enough is being done to curb poaching?
It can never be enough. I've dealt with alternative poaching matters in my court from years ago, where specific cycad species were reduced from 600 in the wild over a year to only 20 remaining in the wild, which is really a big problem. So enough is never being done. However, the manpower and the funding is a big problem.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you.
Could have been quick, Commissioner. Commissioner Malema?
Why did you join the army?
Because I was compelled to, Commissioner.
Why didn't you defy?
Sorry?
Why didn't you defy? Was it a good thing to do?
No, it was not a good thing to do. It was a waste of 2 years of my life, I would say. But I would have spent that time in prison I refused to do, but I thought that in the system I would be able to actually help against members of the South African National Defence Force to commit atrocities and so on. And I think I did my part in that respect.
Now, do you support transformation?
I support transformation fully, sir.
If we have to appoint 2 people.
Sorry?
If we have to appoint 2 people and 3 have applied, all of them are qualified. 1 female, black female, the second one black African male, the third one white male. Since you said you support transformation, they've all met the requirements. What do we do?
Well, I will abide the decision of the commission, and if it is decided to appoint the black female and the black man and leave me out of the equation, I have nothing to say about that.
We're talking about you. Remember, you're going to be a judge now. We're going to appoint you a judge. You must start behaving like one. I'm saying you are about to make a decision. There are 3 people before you, and you are advancing transformation. 1 African female, African male, and a white male, and you must choose 2. What do you do?
So I must choose as a commissioner.
No, as an adjudicator. In line with transformation.
Well, I believe that transformation needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly, especially in the judiciary. So if there are not enough black and or female representation on the bench, I would go for one of them to appoint rather than the white male.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nsebeza?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Doctor, I just want to find out your involvement, which you disclose as a military legal officer. Were you in the Kufut?
No, I was not in Kufut. I was in the South African Defence Force under command of General Constant Viljoen at the time.
But Kufut was a unit of the SADF, a covert unit.
It was actually a covert unit of the police, police force, the SA police force. At that stage, SWAPOL, or Southwest African Police Force, as they were known.
And you had joint operations?
No,
Kufut?
I've never joined any operations. I flatly refuse to do so. I think I've disclosed something about this in my...
Yes, my questions arise from that. I just want to clear there so that I am clear in my own mind what role you particularly played. Was it the time that Eugene de Kock was leading Kufut that you were there?
No, I never met Eugene de Kock, and I never met any of those people. We never worked with Kufut, and I knew about Kufut.
You were aware of Kufut operating in Ondangwa, in fact in the Western Front?
I was aware of that, yes.
At pretty much the same time as you were there as the army,
Yes.
as a military legal officer.
I was trained initially because of my BPROC. I was not trained as a legal officer. I was trained as a financial officer. and that was what I was assigned to do there. However, with my legal qualification and background, I was used to do most of the boards of inquiry and also prosecutions, especially prosecutions in court-martials and working with the civil authorities in prosecutions of servicemen.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure that I don't leave here with the impression that you were in Kufut or you had any association with Kufut, because it was a Madras unit.
It
Yes.
was.
Yes.
It was. I agree.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Ntseveza. Dr. Lamprecht, you are excused.
Thank you, Chief Justice.